Hello readers, I'm the Avid Reader and today we're reviewing Colonization Second Contact, written by Harry Turtledove in 1999. So Colonization is the follow-up series of the World War series, and this happens in the 60s. And the World War series was a war between the humans and the aliens. Now this follow-up series is called Colonization. It's a trilogy and it takes place during the mid-60s, I think. And it's an uneasy peace kind of between the remaining so-called not empires, so the United States, Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, and to a lesser extent Great Britain and Japan, and alongside that you've got the big empire of the race, and they control the southern hemisphere and also Poland. So this book takes place between 1962 to 1963. Of course there are characters of both the race and humans. And this time we get a lot more race characters actually. And of course the main character of the race is the fleet lord of the conquest fleet, Atvar. He has been helping govern the world he has taken over for the empire, but he only controls half of it. And in 1962 you have the colonization fleet which arrives, which is governed by Fleet Lord Raffet, so he has a rivalry with that lizard kind of. And some of the colonization ships are exploded by some submarine. It is unknown who did it, so there are a few mysteries in this book. Later on, while Atvar is visiting Australia, they really love Australia, the race, and now they control it, so the Australians have left and gone elsewhere basically. Well, when they're in Australia, someone ginger bombs the place. And here's an interesting thing. So now with the colonization fleet here, now we get to see female members of the race, and some of them take ginger also. But here's a weird thing. When females take ginger, they always go into season, mating season. And males of the race are not interested in mating unless the females are sending out odors for mating. And they do send these out when they take ginger. So they basically ginger bomb Australia, and here you have a big orgy fest between a lot of lizards, and we get to see the lizards mating several times in this book. You can really see that they have animal instincts, so the sense of superiority against the sex-crazed Tossevites, well, that's kind of gone since they become even more interested in mating than humans during their season thing because of the ginger. It's unknown who blew up the ships or who ginger bombed Australia. Another character of the race we get to see is Tomals, and Tomals is a senior researcher. He has been raising this Tossevite child, Quasquit. She has grown up now, so she acts like a member of the race even though she's a human, and she feels uncomfortable with this, but Thomas shows quite a lot of understanding for a member of the race. But he gets to meet Feles, who is a member of the colonization fleet and also a senior researcher. And he is sent with her to the embassy of the race in Nazi Germany. And remember, the race has embassies in Nazi Germany, in the Soviet Union, and in the United States. So Thomas has to be distant from Quasquit. Feles looks down upon kind of Quasquit, how she is. Thomas wants mates with Feles as she takes ginger, and both of them get to see the Nazi higher up several times. Now in Nazi Germany, Heinrich Himmler is in charge, and we get to see the Nazis justifying their genocide against the Jews. And it's all very cold and methodical, without any sign of emotion, so the race are disgusted by this. In Poland you have a shuttle pilot, SRF. She's just trying to find some place to stay. She meets Mordecai Anowitz and kind of becomes his friend, but he makes some weird joke about that he's going to go see the atom bomb the Jews have. So next time she meets him, she kind of brings it up, and he almost reaches for his gun to kill her, but he decides not to, so they kind of have a weird friendship, both of them. Then in Basra you've got Fotsev, who is just some guard soldier or something like that, who's patrolling the streets, and he sees Ayatollah Khomeini speaking to a bunch of Muslims and getting them riled up, and the Muslims start creating a lot of problems for the areas the race control. So Fotsev once learns that there are female members of the race who have been kidnapped, and a couple of them have been bonded together and drugged by ginger, and because the race wants to mate when females have ginger, while they are attracted to it, and they are ambushed by armed Muslims, and Fotsev dies in the fighting. So Fotsev is the only character who actually dies in this novel. Back in the United States you've got Straha, who is the former ship lord, who is now in exile in the United States. He goes to these lizard parties from time to time, those who have decided to stay in the United States. He regrets that he has to live in exile and that he cannot be in the colonies that the race controls, but he kind of maintains a friendship with Sam Yeager, and once Sam Yeager asks him a favor to find out some stuff about space station stuff through communicating with different members of the race. And Straha obliges him with this, and once he finds an important piece of information, but because some females goes into season, he goes to mate with her and he forgets what he learned that was valuable. So yeah, he has a friendship with Sam Yeager, but he didn't manage to help him that much. And those are the characters of the race. So quite interesting to get both the female and male perspectives of the race. Now on to the humans, and the highest ranking one of the humans is Vyacheslav Molotov. So he has become General Secretary of the Communist Party now in the Soviet Union, and he's shipping arms to China because of the bombing of the colonization fleet ships. Molotov decides to show a sign of goodwill by stopping to send arms to the communist Chinese. The lizards actually do some minor bombing in the United States, in the Soviet Union, in Nazi Germany, so that nobody loses face over this. Molotov meets regularly with Beria, with Gromyko, and with Zhukov. And Beria decides to try to get rid of Molotov in a coup and has announced that Molotov and Zhukov are dead. Molotov wakes up. He is rescued by David Nussbaum, who has now become some NKVD man who helps Molotov out of there, because earlier the NKVD tried to make him sign something where he said he was going to retire, but he refused, so now he could be rescued, and he meets up with Marshal Zhukov, who declares that Beria is dead. And Zhukov, instead of seizing power, as he could have as the most powerful man in the Soviet Union controlling the army, the Red Army, he decides to let Molotov go back as being General Secretary, but he wants a raise in the military budget. So yeah, Molotov cannot balance Beria against Zhukov anymore, so he's quite dependent on Zhukov. But he's still the Comrade General Secretary of the USSR's Communist Party. And he owes a favor to Nussbaum, so Nussbaum asked him to have some Jews in Western Poland killed, as it was some Jews there that sent Nussbaum to the Gulag. So an assassin is sent to kill Mordecai Analowitz. So remember, Mordecai Analowitz, he's a Jewish leader, and the Jews in Poland are well armed now because of the lizards. And there's almost a shootout thing with the Poles. One time when the Poles tried to get the nuclear weapon, but they fail, because Mordecai implies that they will all explode if the Poles try anything, so the Poles give up. The Jews move the atom bomb away, and one time when Mordecai is home during the night, someone knocks at his door and asks for his name. He hears the safety go off of a gun, he ducks. The assassin sprays a bunch of bullets into Mordecai's apartment and then runs away. And Mordecai is there in shock and unsure who has tried to kill him, because it could be the Poles, it could be the lizards, it could be the Russians. Mordecai Analowitz has a lot of enemies, and he bites with a limp regularly, and from time to time he sees Ludmila Gorbunova. Heinrich Jäger, by the way, has died from ingesting some of that gas in the last war. In Germany you have Johannes Drucker, who's a pilot. He is detained by the Gestapo one time when they think that his wife may be quarter Jewish. Drucker is a lieutenant colonel, so some of his higher officers pull some strings to get him out of there, and his wife isn't executed. So he escapes from having his wife killed, but now he will not really get any more promotions. But he's still a rocket pilot, flying things in orbit and things like that. Since now this book is a lot sci-fi, they are flying around in space. Humans have visited Mars and the Moon, and they fly around in rockets in space, and the Americans have installed a space station. By the way, Johannes Drocke was one of Heinrich Jäger's soldiers in the previous series. In France, you have Monique Dutour, who's a history professor. And remember, the Nazis control France and Italy, so she's in German-occupied France now. And one of her students turns out to be an SS man called Dieter Kuhn. And he tells her that she has a brother that's still alive, and he's a ginger dealer, so the Germans want him working for them. And he bothers her regularly. She doesn't like that. She wants him to stop coming to class. But he doesn't force her to have sex with him or something like that, even though he could as an SS man. So as an SS man, he doesn't really abuse his power, but Monique Dutour has in the back of her head that he can do that whenever he wants. And later on, she meets her brother Pierre. Back in the States, you've got Rance Orbach, who is now a handicapped guy, ex-military. He plays cards, he's a drunk, and then Penny Summers comes back into his life. And he hasn't seen her for a while, and she needs help from him. So she's a ginger dealer, and she stole some ginger money from some other drug dealers, so she needs help from him. Once a couple of tough guys come to hurt her, so he kills them, and this is self-defense, so they're not punished or anything. They try to do some ginger smuggling in Mexico. They get caught by the race. The lizards want them to go undercover in France to take care of that Pierre de Tour, who's a ginger smuggler. They agreed to it. Got in Britain David Goldfarb, who's increasingly noticing the anti-Semitism of the British as they have close relations with the Nazis. And by the way, Oswald mostly proposes some anti-Semitic bill, but it doesn't pass. And Basil Roundbush comes along several times and tells him to do some stuff. And Goldfarb has to oblige him because as a Jew in an anti-Semitic country, even though he's in Northern Ireland, he has no choice really. So he's sent on a mission in France to turn Pierre de Tour as a ginger smuggler on the British side. And the SS arrests Pierre de Tour, David Goldfarb, who is a Jew in the Reich, by the way, and the couple Rance Auerbach and Penny Summers. And Moishe Russi helps to get out his cousin out of there, and he does so by asking help of the Fleet Lord. And by the way, Moishe Russi is a senior advisor to the Fleet Lord, and the Fleet Lord pulls some strings, and the Nazis reluctantly let David Goldfarb out of the country. So he meets up with Moishe Russi in Palestine and then returns to Great Britain. And now he's furious at Basil Roundbush and stands up to him. And he and his family decide that they will immigrate to Canada. And the Canadians wonder, why are they treating an officer who has such a good record in the RAF so badly? So you can see that the Canadians and Americans aren't really anti-Semitic compared to the British during the 60s here in this alternative history. That's interesting to see in this alternative history that Britain turning anti-Semitic, but Canada and the United States don't. Pierre de Tour gets out of prison, and he's trying to play all sides against each other, so he kind of works for the lizards. He's going to sell drugs into Germany now, not just ginger, human drugs. Rance Auerbach and Penny Summers are brought back to Mexico, and the lizards decide, okay, you tried your mission, but you kind of failed it, so we're not letting you back into the States where you might sell ginger. Where can we send you? Let's send you to South Africa. And South Africa during this time is a pretty good place to be if you're white, so Rance Auerbach and Penny Summers are fine with it. In Palestine, you've got the perspective of Reuven Russi, who is the son of Moishe Russi, and we get to see his life as a medical student, and he is taught at some university named after his father, and the teacher in science and medicine here is a lizard, and the Muslims get crazy in Palestine, so he's taken to the dormitory for safety with the other students. So yeah, the Muslims have gone crazy and are fighting the lizards now. So it kind of sounds like a rebellion, some intifada or something like that, and they're shouting Allahu Akbar, probably controlled by Ayatollah Khomeini somehow. In the United States, you've got a rocket pilot, Glenn Johnson. He tries to find out what's this secret American space station, and he gets scolded by Lieutenant General Curtis LeMay for snooping around. Same thing, by the way, happens to Sam Yeager, but Sam Yeager doesn't really care. He's a major now, and he's the foremost expert on lizards. But Glenn Johnson, somehow, because he pretends that his airplane is faulty, he gets to enter the space station, and he's basically conscripted there. And he had some minor communication with Sam Yeager, who's also trying to find out about this American space station. And the mystery reveals, oh, it's a spaceship that's going to explore asteroids, and the race don't really care, they think it's just dumb. Sam Yeager gets a great opportunity from President Earl Warren. A couple of eggs of the race have somehow been taken, and now Sam Yeager will get the opportunity to raise them, and he thinks that's great. And he has also kind of acted as some diplomat to Liu Han, who was sent by the Chinese communists to get arms from the Americans, and the Americans give arms to the Chinese communists. So Liu Han helps the communists to plan a takeover of the Forbidden City, and they succeed. They create a distraction by using the Muslims in China to rise up. She has her daughter Li Mei. She learns about her father Bobby Fiore while they were in America, and she shows an interest kind of in Jonathan Yeager, the son of Sam Yeager. And by the way, the culture of the race have kind of integrated into the new world here, as some people like to shave their heads and put on body paint of the race. And finally, you've got the race human, Quasquit, raised by the race but biologically a human. Sam Yeager snoops around on the lizard forums, as the lizards kind of have some message internet thing where they communicate about different things, and Sam Yeager tries to get some information from this. Quasquit thinks this suspicious, tells Thomas, and eventually it gets back to Atvar. Sam Yeager is kicked out of the lizard internet but kind of gets back to it, but he thinks it's dumb when he learns that the big secret was that space station thing. But Quasquit is starting to feel better about herself. She stands up to test check some mean lizard on the ship, and she gets a lot of enjoyment from communicating on those lizard forum things. And those are all the characters of Colonization Second Contact. So, how would I rate Colonization Second Contact? I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. But I'm gonna give it a strong 8 out of 10. It's a really good book. It's a middle of the road Harry Turtledove book, you could say. It's a quite good one. So there have been lesser good Turtledove books, but then there have also been great Turtledove books. But this is a very interesting blend of alternative history and sci-fi, and seeing the contrast of the culture of the race and the culture of different human societies. So we get, of course, to see culture in Nazi Germany, in the United States, in the occupied territories of the race, in the Soviet Union also, at different power levels. That mating thing happened to a lot of lizards, and that was quite interesting to see these animal instincts. The colonization fleet actually shows a hatred kind of against the conquest fleet for failing to conquer all of Tosef 3 or Earth. While the Conquest Fleet, now they understand more the nuances of Tosef 3. Some of the lizards are more human-like now, and some humans, such as Sam Yeager, understand quite well how the lizards work. And because the lizards are here, the humans have developed much better technologically. So it's a more advanced society, I think, in the 60s here than in the 60s of our timeline. Certainly with rockets, at least. I mean, they've actually visited Mars, and now they're sending some ship out into the asteroid field to explore. So that sci-fi aspect will be interesting to learn about in the later books, but I also look forward to learning more about these characters. And again, only Fotsef died in this book. But I think Harry Turtledove's peacetime books are often as good or better than his wartime books. With the Southern Victory series, I preferred his American Empire interwar part in Southern Victory than his Great War part, World War I thing, in the Southern Victory series. So yeah, another good book, Harry Turtledove. Keep it up. So this was the Avid Reader's review of Colonization Second Contact, written by Harry Turtledove in 1999. It got an 8 out of 10. I hope you readers enjoyed this book review, and I will see you readers next time.